Sometimes, when developing a POC, it is best for us to get everything running locally so we have a sandbox to explore in. Beginning your journey into API management with Tyke is no exception to this, and as such, this tutorial will walk you through a few things to let you explore the Tyke gateway and dashboard a bit more fully. Once you have this base set up, you'll be able to explore in great detail all the features that Tyke has to power your API journey. In this tutorial, we will create a simple API endpoint with nodeJS and Express, and then create a local Tyke gateway which will interface with this API endpoint. This will allow for a simple example that you can use to extend your own APIs on your local system while using Tyke. In order to proceed, you will need to have the following: Docker Desktop installed and running, Git installed and running, and a terminal to use for configuration and running Docker commands. If you prefer to use your own existing API, you don't need to worry about the following. However, if you want to build the Node.js API using the tutorial, you're going to need to have the following: Node.js and Npm installed, and VS Code or another preferred IDE for coding. Our first goal will be to create a simple API endpoint. If you don't currently have one on your system and you want to use one to interface with the Tyke API gateway. So the endpoint that we will create will be a really simple JSON response through a GET endpoint. So no logic is actually going to exist in this since we are just using it for demonstration purposes. So the first step is for us to create a new folder where we want our API application to live. And this can be anywhere on your machine. Mine is called Node Express API that you'll see here. And I've just created it in my documents folder. So next, what we'll do is we'll open up VS Code, which I already have opened up here, and you will open up your Node Express API or whatever API you are creating. You're going to open that up in VS Code. This is going to allow us to work with a few of the files that we need to create within our project. So if you're using VS Code, after you open your project folder, you should see your empty folder here in the side with no contents. So what we're going to do is, when you use VS Code, what we will see is that the terminal is actually pointed directly to the directory that our project is in. So if not, you're going to have to navigate into that directory, the root folder of your project. From there, what we're going to do is we're going to run npm init. So here what we can do is we can put in custom values, but for our purposes here, we will just take mostly default values. In order to skip over it, you can just press enter on your keyboard and it'll go to the next. So package name, we'll let it stay as Node Express API, which is the default. Version is 1.0.0, which is fine. Description, let's put in something here. Simple Node API. Entry point is going to be index.js. So when we actually run Node, it's actually going to find that entry point in index.js. Test command we don't need, so just press enter. Git repository, we don't have one for this, so just press enter. Keywords. Author, I'm going to put my name. License, take the default there as well. And then it's going to give us a quick little view of what it's going to look like when it creates this file. So I am okay with this. So I'm going to press enter. And what we'll see now is that package.json will actually pop up in the corner here. So if we take a look at it, it's actually exactly what was previewed here. Now with our terminal pointed to our project directory, I'm just going to type in clear here. What we'll do is we're going to run Npm Install Express so that we can actually install the Express framework. So with that, we'll do Npm Install Express --save. And the --save is actually going to make sure that it saves to our package.json as a dependency. So let's run this. and you'll see that it's going to pull down the dependencies. And now you'll see under here, dependencies, Express has now been added. And you'll also see that we have node modules here, which will contain a bunch of other dependencies, but it also is going to have Express since we just installed that. Now, let's create a file. Let's go up to the top here. Let's create a file called index.js. Sometimes these get created automatically, but currently it did not. Oh, I'm in the wrong folder here. Let's get out of node modules, click on that, and then we'll do index.js. Perfect. Now we'll add in the following code, which will create an Express app that's going to run on port 3030 and print out a simple message letting us know that it's up and running. So to start that, we'll do var express equal to require express, and we'll do var app equal to express. And we're going to use that app to listen on port 3030. Make sure to put our comma in there and a little inline function that is going to console.log server running on port 3030. Okay, we'll save that. And now what we're going to want to do is try and run this. So we'll do node index.js. All right, so there's our simple Express server that's up and running on port 3030. So we're going to Control C to kill that server. And now we're going to add in our first dummy endpoint. So to do that, put some white space in here and do app.get. So it's going to be a GET request, and it is going to come to /URL, and it is going to take a request, a response, and a next argument. And we will put that there. Oh, I need to take this out. There we go. Pop that there. And now what we'll do is I'm going to just copy and paste this in. So it's actually just a response.json. And we will right click, format document. There we go. Okay, so this is just a simple JSON response, which has a people object. Well, it's actually a people array with objects that are people, and then a titles array as well. So if you want to pause the video for a second to get that down, go ahead. And I'm going to continue on, so we'll save this. And now at this point, we're going to run this again. Oh, need to make sure that these are arguments. Perfect. Save, run that again. Okay, so we have our server running on port 3030. And what we're going to do is we're going to do localhost port 3030 /URL. And we'll send that. And now you'll see that we get back our response that we expected. Now, if you don't have Postman installed, you can also do this through the browser. So you can come to the browser here and you can do localhost 3030 /URL, and that'll also bring it back as well. So now that we've built this endpoint, now we can continue on and start looking at how to use Tyke in conjunction with this. Now we're going to look at bringing up the Tyke stack in Docker. So What we're going to do is we're actually going to clone the Tyke Pro Docker demo repository, and that's going to allow us to run the Tyke gateway, dashboard, and portal on our local machine. So to do this, you're going to want to navigate to our Tyke GitHub, and you'll see let's come to it here. So you're looking at github.com/Tyke Technologies/Tyke Pro Docker demo. So we'll go to that, and you'll also be able to see that in the accompanying guide. Those links are all available. So let's go here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to actually clone this repository. So this is all our Docker Compose, all of these necessary files that we need, and all of our configurations. So clone or download, we will take this here. And next what we will do is we are going to clone it into our, basically the same directory that we have our Node Express API in. So I'm going to do cd ... go back, and then I'll be in my API code directory, and I'm going to clone it there. You can clone it wherever you'd like, just make sure that it's somewhere that you remember and somewhere that's easily accessible. So now what we'll do is git clone, paste in our stuff here, hit enter. All right, now what we should see when we bring this up, we actually should see our Tyke Pro Docker demo here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a new window. So perfect. File, and then I'm going to do new window. And then bringing up my Finder again. You can navigate to this through the file menu if you want. The easiest way is just to actually drag and drop, which will bring us up to this. So now what we have is, this is our Docker stack that we're going to use. So the next part here for us to do, now that we've cloned it and we have it in the same repository as our nodeJS API, now what we're going to do is we're going to make a couple tweaks to the configuration so that we can run this locally. Now, in order for us to continue with this, we are using the Tyke Pro Docker demo, which does require a key, a Tyke key. Now, these are easy to get. What you can do is you can actually email us, get a hold of us through the Tyke site, or if you know an account manager, you can also talk to them and they will be able to supply you with a key. You can also do this through our Getting Started on this site as well, which will put you in contact with an account manager. And this will get you a key that will give you a nice little trial license to start and play around with Tyke with. Assuming that we have a key already, which I do have a key on hand right now. So what I'm going to do is, first thing, we're going to go into confs, and we will go into tykeanalytics.conf. And we're going to actually replace the license key, which is going to be blank right now. So if I do a Control F and I do license, okay, license key, which we'll see here. So line 18 on this specific config, although these configs do change as we make updates, so it might not always be on line 18, but in this version it is. So search for license key and you should see a blank field here. And I'm going to paste it into this field here. So with that being done, you're going to want to make sure to save this. So come back here, save, perfect. So we pasted the key into the quotation marks there, saved it, and now the last thing that we're going to do is just quickly check our host configuration so that we can point to our local host. So for that, what we'll do is we're going to look for host_conf, and you'll see it here. Now by default, we have it set to Tyke test, and localhost, which you can totally do. However, that's if you want to manipulate your host file. Easiest way for us to do this actually is to just do 192.7.0.0.1, port 8080, and we'll just do 127.0.0.1 there. So now we've updated these two so that we're running on our local host port 8080. Again, we'll save that. Now we're going to use the Docker Compose file to bring up this stack. So if we come here to new terminal, and you don't have to use the integrated terminal. For me, it's just the easiest. So we'll use docker-compose-f, docker-compose.yml, and then another -f. I'll do docker-local.yml up-d. And this, once we press enter, is going to bring up our Docker stack for Tyke. Okay, and with that, it is now up and running within the Docker environment. You want to make sure that all of these say done to make sure that they successfully did deploy. One thing to note is that if the Tyke dashboard does not come up correctly, what you can do is you can use docker-compose space restart space Tyke dashboard. So like this, docker compose restart Tyke dashboard. And you can do this for all of the different components if you need to, but sometimes the dashboard does fail to deploy. Very, very rarely, but sometimes it does, and you might need to do this. And if you want to check that all of them are up, the easiest way to do it is docker-compose ps, and that should show you what is currently running. And now I know that all of these are running correctly because the state is up. And if you also have any issues that come up, you can also look at the logs from the Docker Compose. So to do that, what you'd want to do is docker-compose logs --follow. And if we wanted to look at the Tyke dashboard, we would do Tyke-dashboard. And this will then show us our logs for it. And this can sometimes help with some troubleshooting. Okay, so again, we'll do clear. So our next step here is actually to bootstrap the Tyke dashboard. So in order to do this, we're going to navigate to localhost 3000, and we should be presented with the Bootstrap dashboard setup screen. So let's go do that now. So if we bring up this here, and I'm just going to overwrite this, and we'll do localhost 3000, and we're brought up to this here. So for our test here, what I'm going to do is organization name, I'm just going to say test. The organization slug, I'm just going to say test again. Put in my email at tyke.io. First name, Matt Tanner. Password, you can do whatever you want. Something easy to remember, sometimes test123 or even password123 will work for, obviously, for this scenario where we're running stuff locally. However, obviously in production or in any type of cloud environment, you'd want to make sure that you do a secure password. If you're using Chrome, you can actually right click and it will suggest a password, but I'm going to use test123. And we'll put that in the confirmation. And now we'll click Bootstrap. All right, so it has successfully bootstrapped, and now we're actually in the API activity dashboard. So this is the first screen in the Tyke dashboard. So before we continue, what we're going to do is we're just going to do a really quick health check on our gateway, just to make sure that it is up and running correctly. So I'm going to head to Postman here, and I am going to do localhost 8080/hello. And we'll do send. And what I should get back is this, hello Tiki, which means this request has successfully went to the gateway and the gateway has successfully sent back this response. So we know the gateway is up and running and we know the dashboard's up and running. So let's continue. Now let's look at setting up our first API here in Tyke. So what we're going to do is first navigate to the APIs menu here. You're going to see we have no APIs. And then we're going to click on the Add New API button here. So we're going to call this test API. You can put it in capitals if you want. We'll call it test API. And you will see that it sets up a listen path. So this is where Tyke is actually going to listen on. You can customize this, but it actually defaults to whatever your API name is. And that's usually the best way to keep it. Target URL, by default, it's going to do HTTP bin, but we don't want to do that. We actually want to point it to our nodeJS API. So for that, what we're going to do is we can leave the HTTP there, but we're going to do host.docker.internal 3030. Okay. So what this is going to do is, since this is running within a Docker container, what we're going to do is we have to use host.docker.internal. If we just use 127.0.0.1, it actually gets confused and it'll actually go to the Docker container's internal localhost. So for that, we need to make sure that we use host.docker.internal, and then our current API is going to be running on port 3030. And our last step here is, from an authorization perspective, you can use all of these different types of authentication within Tyke. You can also use custom authentications. But what we're going to do for our purposes right now is just use open keyless. So it's just going to be an open API. And now that we have this done, let's come up here to save. And you'll see that we have saved our API. So now what we'll do is I'm going to go back into here and I'm just going to grab this API URL and we'll go back to this screen. Now let's go into Postman, and you'll want to make sure that your API is running. So let's see here. Now we'll do cd node express API, and that'll bring us back into this directory. And then I'm going to hit up until I get to there. So we want to run node index.js again, which is going to bring our server back up running our API endpoint. So now this server running on port 3030, we have our dashboard, which is pointing at our localhost 3030. Now we should be able to hit our endpoint. So what we'll do is test API / and since we have our endpoint on /URL, test API is pointing to localhost 3030, but we need to actually specify /URL since that is where our endpoint is sitting. So let's just go over that one more time here quickly. Since we're sitting on /URL, so Tyke is pointing to this service, and then we still need to furthermore put in our /URL. So we'll add that in here, and let's make sure that you're sitting on a GET request, and let's try and send this. And look at that. There we go. Now we have our request that has been routed through Tyke, through to our nodeJS API, back through Tyke, and then has come back to our Postman request. So with that being said, now we have everything configured. We know that it's all working, and now we're able to start playing with Tyke a little further. In this tutorial, what we did was we covered how to create a simple nodeJS API endpoint, setting up a basic Tyke stack via Docker, bootstrapping that dashboard, and configuring an endpoint which reverse proxies to our upstream nodeJS endpoint. At this point, you can actually start to play around with many different Tyke features, including rate limiting, quotas, security, body transforms, and a bunch of other things that you can explore within the Tyke documentation. And with that, we conclude this tutorial.